a lot of the wars, I mean, a lot of the stuff happening in the Middle East is because of the Israeli lobby, one of the most powerful in the United States. And they brag about this. You know, it's called a conspiracy theory here in the U.S., but they've bought off a lot of the preachers to go spout this stuff. That's public. They have bragged, Ariel Sharon bragged that he owned our Congress. They have bragged, and then Haaretz and Jerusalem Post will jump up and down and say that the U.S. has got to do more to attack Iran and go into these other countries. But that's only one level of it. You know, folks always think that, well, they blew up the World Trade Centers to get the $7 billion in insurance money, or they did it to get the oil, or they did it to be able to invade the Middle East, or they did it for weapon sales, or they did it for opium, or they did it for Israel. It's all those reasons. The New World Order doesn't do something unless, in the cost-benefit analysis, it helps all of their major operations. And Israel's very corrupt, does a lot of horrible things. They're very oppressive to their own people. But I do think it's always important to point out that in major polls, over half of the people that live in Israel are against what their government's doing and are upset about it. But then they're beaten back into submission by terror attacks that are stimulated by policies that are oppressive, but also a lot of that is staged. That is, the terror groups are funded. The guy on the ground launching a rocket or blowing himself up doesn't even know it, but it has even come out in Israeli papers that the Israeli state, Shin Bet, mainly their internal security apparatus, has been, quote, creating fake al-Qaeda groups. Quote, right-wing settlers have been caught planting bombs, detonating them. And it's the same thing. But, you know, I get criticized by folks for my questioning of Israel. But then I also get attacked by the Nazis and the kooks and the weirdos because, you know, they think if somebody slips on a banana peel that it's a Jew's fault. And so we have to be real careful about this when explaining, is it anti-Semitic to talk about how the Israeli government from 51 to 61 radiated 110,000 Jewish children? Most of them died. Because any criticism of Israel is called anti-Semitism. So murdering Jews is now good, and being against it is anti-Semitic. I'm not kidding about this. I first learned about 4 years ago because it was on national Israeli TV, their biggest channel, called the Ringworm Children. And they would tell the children, poor Sephardic Jews that are about 20% of Israel, a little bit more at the time, they would tell them that you're going to get a dental appointment and you're going to get checked for the fungus ringworm and you're going to have some x-rays done. And our government funded $3 billion to radiate these children. And in some of the tests, they die on the gurney. Some of the tests, they die a week later, some 2 years later. But the majority did die from the radiation because they hit them with different dosages. And they had a similar program here in the U.S. Thousands of children were radiated. And they took religious communities that had leaders that were very controlling, and they were open with the Seventh-day Adventists, told their military members, we want you to go sacrifice yourselves for the greater good, with bioweapons being tested on you. And a lot of the Seventh-day Adventists died, but at least they were told. And they were sacrificed themselves for the greater whole. Here in the U.S., though, they would take mainly retarded children because of the eugenics angle was they're not human, they don't have good lives. I totally disagree with that. What you do to the least of us, you do to everybody, as Christ said. But the point is, here it was retarded children, mainly, or disabled children. If you don't know about that, it's been Time Newsweek. It's been out for 20 or 30 years. It was secret for several decades. Went on the 40s, 50s, and 60s. It's a eugenics program. Quote, testing radiation. Really, they were testing cadres of military, cadres of doctors. The Nazis they brought over here helped bring that forward. But the point is, Israel has such evil people. At that time, labor Zionist, and I've interviewed Jews from Israel on this subject who've been involved in the filmmaking, writers for major publications, and they will talk about how their government is so controlled by a group above them that the biggest carnage we've seen have been against Jewish children, but the Middle Eastern derivation, or folks that have more of the what you'd call original Semitic, because the Arabs are Semitic too. It's kind of an oxymoron. Well, it's not an oxymoron. It's wrong to say that the Arabs are anti-Semitic, because they're Semitic, folks. They're as Semitic as you can get. I mean, it's in fact, if they blood type real Sephardic Jews, who've stayed in their families and not intermarried with Palestinian Arabs, it's the exact same genome. So this is incredible. And so every time I talk about what was in Heratz, Jerusalem Post, and on national Israeli TV, I'm against murdering Jewish children, or any other children for that matter. I get hateful emails saying, you piece of trash, how dare you attack Israel, you're just an anti-Semite. I found out that the Zionist funded Hitler and made a deal with Hitler not to let Jews out of Germany that wouldn't go to the Middle East, that wouldn't go to Israel, then Palestine. I found I used to hear that like 10 years ago. Oh, that's ridiculous. Then big liberal Jewish scholars at major university professors, I've interviewed them, and there's whole books written on it. They got the actual publications. How the labor Zionist, there's the head labor Zionist saying 1 cow in Palestine's worth more than all the Jews who refuse to come to Israel in Germany. And they said Hitler will persecute Jews, and that will force a worldwide drive to Israel. Then I learned that Israel would bomb Jewish synagogues in Turkey, Jewish synagogues in Iraq, synagogues, obviously they're Jewish, they're synagogues, in Spain in the 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, this is mainstream news. This is admitted. Somebody ought to make a film about this. They've written books on it, and mainly it's Jewish writers who were just totally freaked out by this because they're anti-Semitic. They don't, because they're evil. They don't like murdering Jewish children. They don't like funding Hitler, so they're bad. You see, it's like Arnold is loved by the ADL and given awards because he handed out Hitler records and said at Sieg Heil in public, and was photographed saying Sieg Heil, and told people in documentaries that he admired Hitler and wants to be worshipped. And so because I don't admire Hitler, you see, I'm anti-Semitic. I mean, this is really what it is. This is the incredibleness of what we're talking about here, and just the magnitude. The good old folks at New Silver Solution. And the website is supernaturalsilver.com. Supernaturalsilver.com. This is something that kills bacteria, viruses, you name it, well documented. They've got it down to a super small nano-sized particle. Supernaturalsilver.com. Check them out at Infowars.com. Supernaturalsilver.com.